Welcome to our present state versus history on Speaker. Here we are focused on the current events of our culture through the principles of our history, trying to make sense of the culture and the mindset of today. I am your host, Ray Mayfield. Well, okay, folks, here we are back on the pod. It's December the 10th. Days are going by, the year's about to run up again. I don't know. Probably get on a little rant here today. You'll probably have to bear with me. I don't know. But before we get off into some of the stuff we're going to talk about today, I want to remind you to check us out on the Spreaker.com platform and follow those links, and you'll get notifications of new broadcasts that come through. I'm trying to discipline myself into getting more consistent, I guess, in the time frames and things, but kind of difficult for life seems to be a train wreck all the time anymore. I'm going to keep plugging on these ideas here, as far as these solutions. I hear a lot of people talking about, the problem and ranting and raving on the government and different things. I'm kind of going to get in a little bit of that, I think, today. But the big three, I keep calling them the solutions. They're not new solutions, the things that are actually the old solutions. Some were set in place and have been changed, and some never were ratified into our Constitution that need to be. We need to unfreeze just quickly the state representative numbers for the individuals so that we're represented properly, and ratify the first true amendment that was sent forth for the first 12, actually, instead of the 10 that were ratified as our Bill of Rights. And I'm going to get into all that detail, but check that stuff out. It's on the previous podcast, and there's some information there with some links at different places on our website, which is thetruegospelchurch.org. And if you'll backslash ministries after that, it'll get right up to it. If it doesn't come up, it's coming up pretty clean now, so that may not be necessary. But anyway, and the second solution of the big three is to appeal the 17th Amendment. We need to restore the representation of the state's house so that it brings back that proper balance in the legislative process between the people and the states, like should have never been changed. And we need to ratify the Jefferson Amendment, which puts checks and balances in on this Supreme Court and gives the people a way to control what's going on in the Supreme Court for these judges when they start legislating from the bench and go row. And we get these powers restored separately to hinder or prevent this consolidation process that's been taken on in our government. Because the reason we have a federal government that is out of control and running roughshod on the people's lives and on the states is because of exactly the things we were warned about by Thomas Jefferson and some of the other forefathers that were concerned about the consolidation of the three separate powers and branches of our government. They are supposed to be separate. They are supposed to be monitored and checks and balances so that none can override the other one, and have their own individual responsibilities and roles. And what we have today is a consolidation of all those things through the court system, which if you listen to some of the previous podcasts, we're talking about the arguments that Jefferson was making several places throughout his career in politics, not just during the convention days of the Constitution, but even after that. He was still very much concerned and was a staunch advocate for what is known today as the Jefferson Amendment that was never approved and ratified. And we need to be looking real seriously at that. Not to say there may not be a few little tweaks and changes that we might make to it, but the basic premises of his amendment, of what he had in mind for putting in place to control these Supreme Court justices, they're good things, and we need to really look seriously at that. So if we were unfreeze the number of state representatives and appeal the 17th Amendment and ratify the Jefferson Amendment, we would put checks and balances back in place for our Constitution to help correct this system that's out of control. See, it's not about the people up there, because We just need to assume that all people, no matter what people they are that get into these offices, they're going to be corrupt, because they're all going to have temptations to be corrupted. It doesn't matter how good and how honorable they are when they're sent up there. The positions of power and influence are automatically going to put them in positions where they're susceptible to be bribed and to be corrupted into areas that they probably would have never thought they would have went. And if we don't put these checks and balances back in place to keep the system in control, then those people don't have a chance to withstand the opportunity for corruption that's going to come upon them. And we've proved that over the years. If you read the Founding Fathers' arguments and the things that they brought up when they saw these things, the exact things that they were concerned about, we're dealing with right now in our government. This whole nonsense that went on down here in Georgia and different elections here just recently over the senators, see, we would have never even been dealing with that had the 17th Amendment been put in place like it was supposed to be. That would have never even been a case. And we talk about all that. See, these solutions, they're simple solutions out here. And we talk about this election process, and I've been reading some stuff on Facebook where different ones, ranting and raving about the government, pointing their fingers at them, and when you try to talk logic or make some kind of comment, then I'm the first person they're attacking, and it just boggles my mind at the state of our society and the mindset that we don't even stop and think about some of these things and consider them and figure out a solution to the problem and operate in that solution. But it seems to me like the society we live in today, we just want to cry and whine about it. It reminds me of a story that my granddad used to tell me about an old dog sitting on the porch. I probably shouldn't put this on the airway, but I'm going to tell it because I'm just that guy that lives dangerously, I guess. This old man had this coon dog laying on the porch, and this salesman come by, and he's trying to get directions because he's lost, and about every time he get in a good sentence trying to talk to this old farmer, that old coon dog, he just let out a beller and just a while and haul and howl and carry on. And that old boy looking at that dog, and he asked that farmer, he said, "That's your dog?" He said, "Yep, that's my dog." And he spit, and they go on with their conversation. And a little bit, that old dog just lets out a holler and just a bellers and goes on. And old man says, "Is there something wrong with your dog, mister?" And he said, "Yep, something wrong with that dog." And he spits again, and he goes on telling him how to get on down the road. And that dog, he lets out another just a beller and beller. And guy says, "Man, I hate to keep interrupting you, but I just got to know if there's something wrong with that dog and he belongs to you. Well, what's the deal with that dog? Can you tell me?" He said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "That dog's laying on a nail." And he spits again. He said, "Well, laying on a nail." He said, "Why don't he move?" He said, "Because it don't hurt bad enough to move, just bad enough to bitch." That's where our country is right now. I don't know if we got enough metal left in us to move. The question I've been asking folks, and I know I've got a lot of y'all riled up right now, but you need to just simmer down and listen to me. I've been asking a lot of folks, are you willing to pay the price? Because it ain't going to be easy. These solutions that I've come up with, they're not my solutions. I didn't come up with it. I've just uncovered these things from the original contents of the establishing of our country, that they put these things in place in order for checks and balances to keep the powers limited, keep the powers separated, to keep the federal government from becoming so big, so powerful that it could not be controlled. And that's what we have. So it's going to take a price to fix it. This last election we just had, it was easy solve. We went around with this presidential election, and we've got people on one side saying there was no corruption. We got people on the other side saying there was corruption, and whether there was corruption or whether there's not corruption, whether you can prove it or disprove it at this point, it doesn't matter. There was an easy solution for that election, but we don't want to pay the price to do it. And the simple solution was, we have a question of credibility, so we throw the whole election out. All of it. Every single stinking vote. And we put measures in place, and we make everybody come in person and vote again. Oh yeah, that would have been a trouble, wouldn't it? It would have took a while, and it would have been an inconvenience, but it was the only way to find out where the election truly stood. And here's something else about all that corruption election that, these things are just the simple things. I'm not a real deep, real smart guy, but I'm not blind, deaf, and dumb either. We've got our elections today are all counted by a computer. 90%, maybe not quite 90, but the vast majority of the votes that are counted, we have a total within a short period of time. Most of the states, most of the precincts, they don't have any problems at all saying, well, we had 10,000 people voted and we got 999,000 votes, blah, 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 blah. Because a computer's counting them as they go in a machine. Click, 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 click. So how is it possible in these other places and precincts where it takes 4 or 5 days to get a vote? You're going to tell me something's not going on there? And even if they do have a legitimate problem, you're going to tell me there's not a potential there for somebody to be doing something that they shouldn't be doing? See, it shouldn't be. They got a computer counting the votes. What's the problem? Give me the number. It's that simple. And if we have a problem and we can't seem to get the number, then let's do it again. Throw them all out. Simple solution. But it would be a little inconvenient, wouldn't it? It'd cause a little bit of trouble. And we got to do something about it. It's the same way with our Constitution. These little problems that I've found that have been changed are simple solutions to fix. Are they going to be easy to implement? No. It's going to take some serious doings to do this. You know why? Because the people that don't want those things to be put back like they were, they're the ones in the position of power right now. But there is a way to do it. The Constitution lays it out. It's going to require some effort on the people's part, because if we, the people, are the government, as we are, then we are the people are the ones that are going to have to do something about this. We have to rise up within our own states and bring our own states together to bring a confederation together of the states so that they can meet, you see, and have a convention and discuss these specific detailed items that need to be rectified and get a vote on them and force those things into place. It can't go through the legislative process of the normal process of votes because it's corrupt. The forefathers knew that there was a possibility of that being so corrupt that you would never get any proper things undone. So they gave us an opportunity to be able to go in and go around that process and force those people who are corrupt to do what the people want them to do. Is it an easy process? No, it's nearly impossible. But it was intended to be set up nearly impossible because it needs to be something that is important enough to be accomplished through a task of being nearly impossible. We don't want to be up there trying to change our Constitution with every whim and doctrine or disagreement that goes through. We want it to be something important. And these measures that I'm talking about are not whims of doctrines of people wanting to change. These are restoring of the original mooring of the Constitution the way it was set up. This is tearing down what most of our 1900 generation did when they brought in, because if we get these measures put back in place, then we go back in and we start looking at some of these programs that have been put in place that our federal government's involved in, they have no business in. Is it wrong to have a, say, public school system to where we have a state, that has, monies that they're putting in to improve the education and move forward? There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But for the federal government to be involved in that, there's absolutely something wrong with that. For the federal government to be involved in conversations about who I am in relationship with as another individual with another individual, that is absolutely out of order with our Constitution and the intentions of our government. The federal government has no business in my Medicare, the federal or medical. Forget the Medicaid, Medicare nonsense. The federal government has no business involved in any of those aspects that can be solved at a local and state level. Oh, well, it'll make all the states different. Well, yep, it sure enough will. What's wrong with that? And if the states are doing things they shouldn't be doing, then guess what happens? Population changes, and guess what happens? It motivates them to do what's right. Boy, there's another one of those checks and balances that they put in place, see? We don't have that problem now because we got the big federal government involved. We got all this federal money involved. See, that's the problem, the money. Well, that's another little pet peeve of the rant. That's another simple little solution. You know, they talk about the corruption of these elections and these folks running for office, and it's all about the money and everything. Well, that's an easy solution too, but nobody wants to hear it. Open up a public campaign fund, and anybody that wants to contribute to the presidential race, let them put money in it. Let them put as much money as they want in it. Anybody and everybody. And we're going to cut off the contribution dates. Let's say that the election's going to be in January, so we'll cut off the contribution dates. Let's say, let's go back and say maybe October, September. I don't know. Just pick a month. On the end of that month, we're going to stop all contributions to this fund for this election. Not the contribution. You can still send money in, but it just won't be applied to this upcoming election. And if at the end of that cutoff day, they cut that date off, there's $5 million in that election fund, and we got 5 people running for that office, then guess what? We take that $5 million, we divide it up equally, and we give it to each one of the candidates, and we say, hey, go spend your money. And all you propaganda machines out there that we call the media, if you give one candidate 5 minutes of time, you got to give all candidates that same 5 minutes of time at the same time zone slot. So it's the same benefit to each one. Oh, you mean we would have a fair running for an election? You mean we would have equal representation? Oh my goodness, what a novel idea would that be? And then guess what? If you don't spend all the money that we gave you to run for your public office, then whatever's left over, it's got to go back to the general fund. And then we'll start saving money up for the next election, whatever it is. Boy, there's a novel idea, fair and unbiased. Simple solution. But we don't want to do that. Why? Because then we can't use our money to corrupt people. We can't use our money for political influence. We can't use our money to propagate our agenda. Ouch or amen. It doesn't matter. You see, this is what my point is. There's some of these issues that we have that are so divisive, so driving in this country are simply solved. They are not easily submitted. But we got to do the hard thing. That's why I say I don't know if our society today has the metal within it to pay the price. I don't know if our society today has the ability to self-sacrifice enough in order for the future generation not to go to the demise. Because Thomas Jefferson, he made the statement that if our government got to the place that it is today, that there was only going to be 2 solutions, that the people would move into a place where they would bring diplomatic change of these things that I'm talking about, or there would be bloodshed. And it is my greatest fear that it is going to be bloodshed. We can't move and bring correction to this country without bloodshed. There is a proper way to do it. There is systems that are put in place, and it's not going to be an easy task. It's not going to be a road tiptoeing through the tulips, I guess. But yet when you get somebody like me on here talking about this kind of stuff, nobody wants to hear it. But we want to get on there and rant and rave about how it's all their fault and it's all what they've done and those guys and them. Well, how about let's use everybody talking about pronouns. Let's use the pronouns like me and I and us. That puts accountability and responsibility where it lays. We can run our fingers up and point out them and they and all that all day long and have no responsibility, no accountability, and who the heck is them and they anyway? What are you doing? What am I doing? I'm doing everything I can. I have for the last 30 years. I've been barking. I've been trying to teach on this Constitution, and I'm not complaining, but I get very little support. I get very little traction, and most people, they listen 2 or 3 times, and then they don't follow. They don't care. Why is that? They don't want to hear the truth, because there is a solution. And when I'm done talking, it's a responsibility lays right back in our lap. It's my responsibility. I am the government. I have to do my part to bark and hope that my next generation, my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren will have a nation of freedom that they can live and grow up in. But the way things are going, I'm fearful for my grandchildren that are 9, 10, 11 years old today and what kind of environment and what kind of society they're going to live in. We get to listen to these propaganda machines about all this same-sex marriage and alternative lifestyles and all these woke people that are all about this one world order, and they want to make it out that they are the majority. But I got news for you, folks. They are not the majority. They just seems to be the majority because they have got control of the media outlets. And there's another thing that we can control. Why are the media outlets the big three or the big four or whatever they are? Because that's what everybody's listening to. Turn them off. We have the power of the purse. Stop watching it. Stop looking at the things they promote. Stop paying attention to them. Quit buying the propaganda movies or whatever else it is. Just stop. Oh, well, my kids like them. Yeah, they sure do. Just stop buying them. Pay the price. We got a corrupt school system. What's it going to take to fix that? Get your kids out of the public school. Oh, well, I got to this. Yeah, I know. Pay the price. What's your priority? Having that new car and living in that bigger house with all them fancy amenities, or educating your children? What's the priority? Bringing this nation back to a place of order so it's strong and runs in a place. I mean, for Pete's sake, we got a president that just went over here and what we call it, negotiated with a terrorist to bring home a traitor to this country who went into another country with the attitude that the rules don't apply to her and you can do whatever she wants and they're just going to have to bow down because she's somebody, because that's her attitude. Everything I've ever seen her say and to move forth in a film, you can see her attitude all over her with her special, little, what do you call it, privileged attitude, and how she's above and superior to everybody and everything. And we leave a soldier over there. Come on, really? And the people of this country are sitting still for, oh yeah, we'll get on the propaganda machines and the Facebook or whatever else and run our mouth and vent ourselves, make ourselves feel better. But what are we doing about it? What are we doing about it? You need to be bringing our Marine home, especially now. I mean, we've tolerated the behavior and the attitude about all of it up until now, but now that we see what's happened there's no excuse for not doing everything necessary to bring this Marine home. I mean, good grief, if you're going to let these heinous criminals that we have for these foreign countries loose, just let them all loose. Give them all to them. Just get your Marine home. What happened to leaving no man behind? So you get me started on that with the big POWs left behind and all of that never forgotten, see, because I'm a staunch advocate for all that stuff. I think it's a huge mistake that our government doesn't go and search for those that are missing in action, only those that are killed. Bad idea. How many have we left behind we didn't know were alive because we didn't look for them? Now we got a man we know is alive. Who knows what kind of behavior treatment he's getting. But yet somehow that's okay. And we get somebody that doesn't even respect this country with a self-righteous, indignant attitude. Really? We got a federal government that's out of control, folks. They don't care what we the people think. The only way for we the people to get back control of this country is to start dealing on the state level and get our state representatives to the point to where we can call a convention of the states with a 2/3 majority, but that convention has to have a specific outline. It has to have a specific plan. It can't be some random little put together propaganda machine. It has to have specific mission, a specific goal, with a specific solution in mind before it can be called to come together. And when those folks come together with a 2/3 majority of the states comes together and votes for any of the measures or anything close to the measures of what we've uncovered to the restoring of this nation, they can force through our setting government, no matter how corrupt they are. Just think of what would happen if we would appeal the 17th Amendment. All these senators that all have to be reappointed in all of those positions. We could overturn the entire population of the Senate within a brief period of time. Wouldn't happen all at once. Don't misunderstand me. But if we go back to the original platform of the senators, every 6 years, 1/3 of them would be reappointed and moved over. So even at the slowest measure, 1/3 of the Senate House would be changed and moved out and immediately. It would stop these 50-year politicians. It would stop these. I've been all my life, will go to school and get elected to be a politician and go up there and then tell somebody out here that's working for a living how to run their business. Really? I mean, for Pete's sake, I just saw on Facebook, I got a man out here driving a truck for a living, trying to make a living, and something in the road runs up and knocks a hole in his fuel tank that he just happened to fill it up, and because of some little bit of diesel fuel on the ground, the man's truck's impounded, and they go out there and make such a big deal about it like it's some big hazardous waste thing that's going to kill millions of people and clean all this stuff up and take his livelihood away from him until they get security of money to clean up their little toxic waste thing and go out there and act like that, we've just absolutely, destroyed hundreds of thousands of all this stuff and go out here and dig it around the ground. I guarantee it'll be hundreds of thousands of dollars is what the bill will be to clean up a couple thousand gallons of diesel fuel. Well, probably wasn't even that. It's probably more like 600. Senseless. Does that mean we don't clean up? No, I'm not saying that at all. But that's the federal government, boys. Federal DOT regulating our trucking industry. Federal DOT regulating a man trying to make a living. Nonsense. Do we need to do things in order to, yeah, but what fault of that is his? Who's to blame for what took place? It's called road hazard. I mean, I can go on and on. I know I'm just ranting and raving today. We have got to get people to wake up. I need your help. I need your help following these podcasts and sending them to your friends and pushing to get people to wake up and look at what's going on and start pushing, writing letters to your legislators. Start writing letters. There's a website out there. It's called Write Your Congressman. It's a subscribing platform to where you can go in there and put your own zip code in there, and you'll get updates on exactly the people that are representing you in your district and the legislation that they're involved in. It'll come straight to you, so you'll know exactly what your representatives are doing in the state and in the federal level, and you have access through that to write letters dealing with the exact issues that they are dealing with right then, live time. You get direct access to your representatives, and you can start writing these people and talking to these people and having an influence on what they're doing. And I had a legislator tell me one time that if they got 10 letters over any subject, that they considered that an overwhelming response. That's amazing. We've got state representatives in the federal government that represent 175,000 members, each one of them. That's insane. The forefathers never intended for that population to be over 50,000, 60,000 at the absolute most per representative. You know what? If you had a state representative in the federal government that was representing your county, he'd probably care what you thought. You would probably have access to reach him, and you would have the proper representation in the federal government that you're supposed to have. They say, oh, well, we can't deal with all those representatives. Yes, we can. And in today's world, is it going to be easy? Absolutely not. But we have ways through our media and our platforms to communicate today. They don't all have to go to Washington, D.C. and be present and accounted for. You can live stream video conference meetings all over the world. They do it every day. There's ways that it can be done in today's world easily. Is it a little inconvenient? Yep. But the people, we the people, would have the proper representation that was intended for us to have in the federal level. We have got to get back to the place where we are in control of our government. Because there's a little analogy I read on the Facebook the other day. I got to quit getting on Facebook, don't I? I got way too many things irritating me, but this didn't really irritate me. It's just so much truth in it. It's the reality of it that we don't realize. The guy was talking about how to catch wild hogs and throwing a little corn out there in the field and getting them used to coming, and then putting one fence up, and then throwing a little more corn out there, and then putting 2 fences up, and then put 3 fences up, and then put the last fence up with a gate in it, and just keep putting the corn in there, and they just keep coming in there and feeding that free food. And then you close the gate and you got the whole herd of the wild hogs caught up. And folks, we're in that position where they're just about to close the gate if we don't wake up. They're going to be entangled into a place there's only going to be one solution at that point. And it ain't going to be pretty. If the Lord doesn't return in the meantime, or the volcano blows up, or some natural catastrophe takes place. But assuming everything's going to continue as it is, and we have the time to bring correction, if we don't start moving, correction will never be implemented. And I can see I'm rattled on way over my time, so I'm going to have to leave it there with you. So until we meet again on the pod, have a wonderful day.